Alright everyone, I have quite the dilemma and I need your help. Do I want to play Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 4, or Resident Evil 4? Today we are looking at remasters, remakes, and reboots, and whether they're good or bad for the gaming industry. Let me be honest, some of the best games I've played in recent years have been remakes. Resident Evil 2 and 4 remakes are masterpieces in their own right, and Final Fantasy VII is also just one of the best games I've ever played in general. Remakes are different from remasters because they are made from the ground up, using new engines, making the game for a modern audience with modern graphics and modern mechanics. Usually, when remakes change the gameplay or mechanics of the original game, they do so without compromising what made the original what they are and usually keeping the core essence of the game. I see remakes as an opportunity for new generations of players to get into older franchises, and also as an opportunity for game developers to fix or add anything to the classic game that might have been overlooked in the original release. And yeah, I've heard the argument that remakes aren't original and developers should use their time and efforts to instead make something original, but personally I believe that remakes are productive for the medium and the industry. Most publishers will have smaller dev teams work on remakes, and the work will almost never delay or hinder any other original releases. A great example of a fantastic remake is the aforementioned Resident Evil 4 remake released in 2023.
Resident Evil 4.
The original game, released in 2005, is already considered one of the best games of all time and a giant influence for third-person shooters and a cornerstone for modern video games. So you might think there's no room for improvement, as the game is already a masterpiece, but the remake shows us that there's always room for improvement. The movement and shooting, the most important mechanics of a game, were improved tenfold in my opinion. The graphics are some of the best I've seen on a modern console, and even brand new mechanics like a parry system are a tasteful and welcomed addition to the game. The story is kept the same and the core gameplay is untouched. The remake is done right. Now on the flip side, from the same franchise, we have the Resident Evil 3 remake from 2020, which is not a good remake. It cut a lot of content from the original game, making it way shorter, and changed the game style from an explorative survival horror to more of a linear action game, changing the tone of the original game completely. And Nemesis, the biggest thing to come out of Resident Evil 3, is used so poorly and is now simply a forgettable villain in this version of the game. This is exactly what a poor remake looks like, but to be completely fair, it's still not a terrible game in its own right. It still provides a unique experience and can still be enjoyed by multiple players. Now, like I mentioned, remakes are a good way to get new people invested into older or long-going franchises, but remasters are a good way to get new people invested into older games. Remasters usually focus on improving graphics and other technical aspects that are much less resource intensive than remakes. Remasters will never change the core gameplay of their games besides some quality of life changes, such as the change of controls on a once clunky game. A good example would be Metroid Prime Remaster from 2023, a game that is identical to the original but with better graphics and better controls that overall makes the game feel and play far better than the original without having to change anything with its core. Metroid Prime Remaster is a perfect remaster. Everything that was changed, in my opinion, was for the better, and you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference between the remaster and the original from 2002 if it wasn't for the graphics. Personally, I also enjoy remasters and I see the value in them, especially when a game that has been stuck on old hardware is finally seeing the light of day with a fresh new coat of paint. However, I can also understand the argument that remasters can just be a lazy way of getting a quick buck out of customers, especially when the game already has a big following or isn't even that old of a game. I'm looking at you, Naughty Dog. We don't need that many versions of The Last of Us. A good example of a bad remaster or remasters are the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition remasters. GTA San Andreas, Vice City, and GTA 3. These games launched with a ton of bugs. It seems like you couldn't even play the game for a solid 20 minutes without accidentally running into some game-breaking bug. The updated graphics made the characters look absolutely terrible in my opinion. The original game was just much better than these remasters. These games just obviously did not need a remaster in my opinion. And while we're on the topic of games that suck, let's go over reboots. Reboots, on the other hand, are, well, I can think of Doom 2016 and Tomb Raider 2013, and that's about it when I'm thinking of good reboots off the top of my head. It's much easier for me to think of bad reboots, Let's see, we have Saints Row, Duke Nukem Forever, Golden Axe Beast Rider, Bomberman Act Zero, Bionic Commando, Sonic 06, Perfect Dark Zero, Alone in the Dark, Space Raiders, Medal of Honor, Turok, NFL Blitz, Twisted Metal, Need for Speed. I can go on. Reboots are just not good. It's rare when a reboot of a series turns out good, because most of the time reboots tend to be completely different from the original games, only keeping some characters and story beats. Reboots to me are more lazy than remakes and remasters, because at least with those, the publishers actively chose to create something similar, as where a reboot feels like publishers have no original ideas, but want to make something new or original. So they take an old IP and make some new rushed game that's based off something we've seen already before, but that used to be better. Reboots are always changed so drastically from the original game, and it's never for the better. I remember in the early 2010s when it felt like we were receiving nothing but reboots for both video games and movies. It was a really annoying time to be around, and I'm glad that the age of reboots is over, and hopefully we get only good reboots moving forward, or at least just faithful revivals of old franchises that aren't necessarily reboots. On rare occasions, we do get good reboots. Look at Doom 2016. It really felt like they took the original Doom and put it into new hardware. This is what a good reboot should feel like the original game but with a twist. Modernizing the game or franchise with new mechanics that more or so modernize the game rather than change it. And the sequel Doom Eternal is just as good, and I'm super excited for the third one. Unfortunately, most reboots are not this good. Look at Saints Row 2022. Originally, Saints Row started off as a GTA clone type of game and slowly became one of the most iconic sandbox open world games in the past few years. It had a wacky, over-the-top tone and identity that made it stand out, and it was not afraid to take risks. For example, in the fourth game, you literally played as the United States president fighting off an alien invasion using superpowers. But the Saints Row reboot took everything that made the past 4 games stand out and threw it out the window and decided to do its own thing. Kinda.
At guard, making his third appearance as an All-Star for the Chicago Bulls, Derek.
You see, the Saints Row reboot tried to go back to its roots before it was more than just a GTA clone, and maybe some players wanted that, but they also just did not make a good game. Its gameplay was boring and repetitive, and the story and characters and setting were just bland and forgettable. A far departure from what made Saints Row a good game or a good franchise. Hey, but that's just my opinion. Let me know your opinion in the comments below. Do you like remasters, remakes, and reboots? Are reboots really awesome and I'm just tripping? Let me know. Thank you guys for giving me a little bit of your time. Hit that subscribe button and I'll see you in the next one.